Well, welcome everybody to this next segment. We are with Virginia Walden-Ford. She is one of America's leading advocates for parent empowerment. As a student, a mother, an advocate, and a grandmother, Virginia has spent her lifetime fighting to create new educational opportunities for children and families. Through this interview, we're going to kind of explore her history and her background. So, with that, I want to welcome Virginia Walden-Ford. Virginia, welcome. Virginia, welcome. Good to have you.
It's good to be here. It really is.
It is so wonderful to be able to meet with you, kind of in person. I mean, I've been watching your story, watching the launch of the movie Miss Virginia, which is available to stream. If parents want to look up that movie, and just hearing your story is just so inspiring. So with
Thank you.
that, yeah, with that, I want to kind of, especially for our parents that are brand new to this conversation, to not only give them an introduction to you personally, but also to your work and how, as a parent, you were able to really exercise power and make change to not only make things better for your own child, but also for many students and now thousands of students. So with that, uh, talk to us a little bit about your childhood experience growing up in Little Rock, Arkansas, and being one of the first students to desegregate Little Rock schools.
Robert, thank you again for having me. I am in Arkansas right now, actually. But
Mhm.
so that as soon as I got back to Arkansas, I started remembering all those things that I grew up with. I grew up with teachers. My parents were both teachers. My father was actually the first Black superintendent of Little Rock School District. So we were very, very invested in education. Our family was, which I think is what kind of caused me to want to be involved as an adult. I did go to Central with the second group in the 60s, the second group that took African American kids into Central. And it was really an experience for me. It was different, but I realized, and it was scary, but I realized going into Central that they had books and libraries and equipment that we didn't have in segregated schools. We were always the ones that got books that were out of date, or in science class, 20 kids use one microscope. I mean, those kind of things. So when I walked into Central and I saw this whole room where everybody had a microscope and the library was amazing, it really changed where I wanted to be. I remember my father telling me, you need to go to Central, because I didn't want to go, because your sisters, my younger sisters, would be following me, and what
Mhm.
would it look like to them if I refused to go
Right.
and change the world.
Yeah.
And so I did, and it was an incredible experience for me. Growing up here, being around people that were so interested in how kids were educated, and it stayed with me. It always stayed with me. As much as I fought being a teacher, I'm an accountant. Um, I ended up going into education by being an activist or
Yeah.
an advocate
Right.
for parents and kids.
So that experience, I can't even imagine what it was like during that time to go into an environment that was, completely alien and new. Um, and not only integrating students, but then it was so wonderful to hear that your father eventually became superintendent of the school district. But how long did it take, and did educators ever really truly get integrated as well? Because we hear a lot of stories about students getting integrated, but then we also hear stories of how many Black educators were kind of kept out of those schools, and how we lost many Black educators. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I certainly can tell you about my father and the people that are around him. My father was appointed in 1967 as assistant superintendent for personnel. So he hired and fired everybody.
Uh,
And I remember a newspaper article that I read. I was a teenager that said Negro hired to be assistant superintendent, and he's going to have responsibility over all teachers. And I remember that the people that opposed my father getting that appointment said in articles and interviews, oh, he's going to just appoint black teachers. He's not going to um, integrate. I mean, certainly appointing black teachers would be integration, but he wasn't going to bring everybody together. But they didn't know my father. And my father was the type of person where what he said in a news article that I remember as clear as it was yesterday is that I am going to hire the best teachers to educate children in Little Rock, no matter what their race. And that's what he did. He was beloved here in Little Rock, and certainly we were proud of him. But I watched him go through that, and I thought, if I can make that kind of impact on the world, that's what I want to do. And even at 14, I realized how important it was. My mother was also one of four black teachers that was appointed to white schools, so she
mm,
integrated in even earlier than he did, and in 1962. And so I was seeing that in my home with my family, and I was seeing my parents, their biggest concern being that children, no matter what race, would be educated in quality environments. And that's what they talk to us about. That's what they talk to others about. And that's what we saw when they were there. And it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. I can't even imagine, what would have been like had I not been able to be a part of what that was. My parents taught us
yeah.
to serve our community, and of course we followed them by example. Um, and they were kind and loving and wonderful, and they cared about everybody. I remember at 15 in 11th grade, I didn't like a teacher,
Yeah.
and so I told her when uh, she was really nice, but I didn't do something she wanted done, and I was being a teenager. And I said to her, "Do you know who my father is?" And she said no. And I said, "My father probably hired you." Oh my gosh, I got in so much trouble for saying
Wow.
that and doing that. My father was like, "How dare you?" You know, and but I remember thinking, that's why people get in trouble. That's why, people have difficulties because they act like a teenager. And but I got punished for that one. And the teacher, and I had to apologize to the teacher and to the class. But it was a really good lesson for me to learn. It learned me to have respect for everybody. It taught me that that I couldn't go around thinking that I could get anything accomplished if I was going to be rude and disrespectful. So, all those lessons were so cool to learn as a teenager. So by
Wow.
the time I got out of high school and went to college, I was really gung ho to be of service
Yeah.
to my community. Didn't
Mhm.
know how I was going to do it, didn't even know what I was going to do. But I knew that part of my life journey would be serving others. And
Yeah.
I got that opportunity.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about that. So you ended up in Washington, D.C. So how did that transition come about? And then when you got there and your children started attending school, what that experience was like and what moved you?
Well, I got married young, had kids, moved to Washington to take a job actually, at a place called Sister Cities International, which gave
Oh
me
yeah.
a world view. And
Yeah.
Sister City allowed
I'm a
me to
I'm a
meet
board
people.
member. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that
Yeah.
was my first job, and I handled their finances, and things moved along, and then I got divorced. Story of my life. I got divorced, and I ended up raising my kids by myself. So
Yeah.
it changed where I went. It changed how I operated. Having to raise these kids alone in DC. Um, it was hard, but I tried to stay involved in their lives. My older kids, I have three kids. My older kids were very academically driven. I don't know if they were gifted, but they were certainly driven. They liked to do well, they liked to get good grades. They were just easy. I remember telling people, oh, I got it good. I got these great kids, and I don't have to worry about all the stuff you all are worried about.
That
But
comes
then
from
my
somewhere.
third child, was the one I think taught me how to be a real parent because he struggled every step of the way. He had some learning problems, and people were very easy to dismiss him
Mm,
or to say, he why waste your time on this child because he's not going to do anything. He's troubled. He's getting into trouble in school,
yeah.
and as he got older, the troubles became scary. He was hanging out in the streets. He was, not going to school. I'd actually take him to school. And as soon as the car would pull off, he would leave, and I get a call from the school saying, William's not here today. And I go, yes, he is. I dropped him off. And they said, well, he didn't make it. So I knew at some point that we had to do something different for him. And in my head, I thought, well, I'll just, go to the school and see how they could help me. And to be perfectly honest, I was just really dismissed. I mean, the attitude I got was, we got 40 kids in the class. We do not have time to worry about your one, especially because he doesn't seem to want to learn. And we're gonna worry about the ones that want to be here and want to learn. And I was just devastated. Robert, I said to them, these are the kids we need to spend more time on. So I began to go to school board meetings and plead my case, and I was dismissed again. But
Yeah.
then I started talking to parents in the neighborhood who were having similar problems, and it became very clear to me that there was something that could be done. We have to find a way to put kids in environments where they want to be in. We got to protect them. We got to take care of them, and I heard about Milwaukee, and how parents were able to choose the schools that their children attended based on their needs and get the resources to attend them. Because up until that point, there were no public charter schools.
Mm,
Um, there was get a second job if you want your child to go anywhere close to a private school.
wow.
And I was already working two jobs, but I did get a third job, and I still and put him in a private school,
Mhm.
and but I couldn't pay it, and the day they told me that I had to withdraw him because I couldn't pay the tuition was the worst day of my life.
Oh no.
But that was when I got angry. I was like, there's something we can do. And I heard about just school choice programs around the nation, and I thought this is something DC ought to do. What I didn't know is that they had tried it, but they couldn't organize parents,
Yeah.
and so I understood that I needed to get other people to come on board with me. I
Mm,
was very lucky because I did connect with a couple of members of Congress
mhm.
who said, well, if you could get parents there, we'll help you. I didn't know if I could, but I went out all over the city and I talked to parents and I knocked on doors and I got a petition signed, and they couldn't ignore us. When you got 3 or 4 thousand names on a petition,
Wow.
and you talking at every single event, and they can't get rid of you, they
Mhm.
have to listen, and they did. And that was kind of the beginning of how we got started. Um, I believe one mother's voice can change the world.
Yeah.
I believe that all you got to do is want to fight for your children, and you can make a difference.
Yeah.
And what started with 20 to 50 of us ended up being thousands, and it was amazing. I didn't expect it. I mean, I didn't expect people to always listen to me, but they did. And as long as I was honest with them, and as long as we were a unit, as long as we were fighting together for our kids,
Mm,
it was extraordinary. And so I believe that every parent has the opportunity to use their voice.
Mhm.
That's something that we don't do. We sit back and we complain about things and we talk to others
Yeah.
and we sit around the kitchen table and they have these conversations about how much we hate what's happening with schools or education. But that's as far as it'll go.
Yeah.
So we have to start speaking out. We have to start using our voices and making sure we're heard in a loving, dignified, courageous,
Yes.
quiet, peaceful way. I used to tell the parents that I led, if you start hollering and screaming and cursing, ain't nobody gonna listen to you. The reason I got listened to is because I spoke to people in a respectful way. And that's what I encourage parents to do. So everybody liked our little group of parents because we were speaking, informing them. We were talking about our children
Yeah.
and what we wanted for them and who could tell us no.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing? Let's go back to what you were saying about when you went visited the schools and the principal, and when you visited the school board. Isn't it amazing how this many years later, parents are still running into the same issues when they have concerns at school. They get
Yes.
dismissed at the principal level. They get dismissed at the school board level.
Yeah.
How did that make you feel when just knowing that something needed to be done, but running against that brick wall?
Well, in the beginning, it was just hurtful. It's like you be in a meeting and you began to speak, and somebody would cut you off, and it was very clear they didn't want to hear what you had to say. And so that was hurtful.
Mm.
And because I wasn't a public speaker, it made me go back into myself. I got scared. You know,
Yeah,
then I
yeah,
got mad.
yeah,
And then I said, oh no, they ain't gonna listen to me. I have something to say. And so, the more I felt strong,
yeah,
the better. People can look in your face and tell, oh, this is somebody we can just walk all over. But they also can look at your face and say, this is somebody who has the strength to say what they have to say, he or she,
mhm,
and get the work done. And that's what we want parents to understand. You have every right to speak out on behalf of your child.
yeah,
Every right.
yeah,
We don't know that. We think we have to be quiet and we think others have to speak for us. We have every right to speak out on behalf of our kids. And that's what we did. We spoke out, we informed ourselves, we were strong, we empowered
yeah.
parents to be able to go out and say what they needed to say. And over time, this is not easy. It's not easy. First,
Mhm.
it takes time. Second,
Yeah.
but it can be done. And all you have to do is stand up, be strong, and do it. Nobody could have told me that I would be doing this. Nobody. But when I was 8 years old, my father told me, "Girl, I hope you get a job where you can talk, because you talk a lot." I did. And so that helped me, I guess. But I just believe that there's so many parents that are sitting there full of despair, hopeless, helpless, who, if
Yeah.
they can find that inner strength,
Yeah.
you know, and use those voices, they can make a difference.
So talk to us about relationships, because we all know like this work only moves at the speed of relationships, and you reaching out to those, even just those initial parents. Like, who was the first person you went to go talk to about this in the community, and how did those conversations start taking place, and what was that changing point to really creating those relationships and inviting other parents into this effort?
Well, the first person I talked to was Cheryl. Cheryl had two kids. They were driving her nuts. They were failing in school, and she was my neighbor. And I remember sitting down with Cheryl and having a long talk with her about what we could do about her kids and my kids, and how we could move forward and how we could get schools to listen to us. And she was like, that's a really good idea. Let's invite some more neighbors over. And at some point, we had maybe 10 or 20 parents that came and sat down, and we had wonderful discussions. And and they wanted to do something, but they didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't either, but I was going to find out.
Yeah.
And so I did. I talked to people. I learned who was involved in education reform and who were the organizations that would be supportive of this. I believe in coalitions. I believe that parents have to work together with organizations that are doing similar kinds of things for children. And excuse me, so we found organizations that were supporting kids,
Yeah.
and we met with them and they were receptive. And then, again, I spoke on Capitol Hill and I hit a nerve in some members of Congress who said, okay, if we get her to speak all the time, but of course, it wasn't just me, we began to bring other people into it. But somebody said, you know, you have to teach people how to talk about this. So those relationships, I led thousands. They were like my children.
Yeah.
They were like my daughters and my sons and my grandkids. There are still people in Washington that call me mama or grandma because you build relationships based on love and support.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. We had groups of people that talked about with passion about their children.
Yeah.
And my job, my challenge was convincing them that I did know what I was talking about, even though I really didn't. But I knew where I wanted to go, and and aligning myself with people that can make that happen.
Yeah.
And that was fun and it was incredible. I mean, we did meetings in the community where they were calling me, here comes the education parent, she coming to talk to us. And when you start getting people to respond to you in that kind of way. But I really do believe in building coalitions. I worked with the Freeman Foundation, I worked with Cato, I worked with AFC, I
Mhm.
worked with all of those organizations who were amazing people that got behind us and said, you do this and we'll support it. And even though the movie talks, when they see the movie or if they've seen the movie really talks more about the parent effort. There were a lot of effort, a lot of people involved, a lot of supporters, a lot of people that held us up, you
Yeah.
know that stood shoulder to shoulder with
Right.
the parents. And
Right.
those are the things that are really important. Sometimes, you can start this with a group of parents, and but you need a little bit of support. And so we built coalitions and organizations that supported us, with organizations that supported us. But my relationship with the parents, was incredible. That is a relationship which to this day
Yeah.
I cherish.
Yeah.
And somebody told me one time, we were at a big dinner, and so parents kept walking up to speak to me, and somebody said, "You act like you know every one of them." Well, I do, because I'm a parent and
Yeah.
I know what it feels like. And I may not know everybody's name or every child's name, but I know every parent.
Yeah.
And that's what parents have to understand. They have to support each other, they have to make sure they take care of each other. And that's what we did. We took care of each other.
That is amazing. And out of those relationships, let's talk about the accomplishment, right? So first of all, DC schools function a little differently than most school districts, right? Because
Yeah.
those decisions are made at the by the U.S. Congress, correct?
Ex- Pretty much. Well, this program certainly is a federal program, so it definitely operates differently. The traditional public school system, they had a school board and they had um, all the things that most people have, but it is a federal city. And so one of the reasons that I think that it became so widespread in the information about what we were doing is because it's a federal city.
Mhm.
This is a federal program. Congress had to pass it, and that in itself, uh, that was amazing. I mean, most of us had never been in the Capitol. Most of us had never been to a congressional office building. But, we got out there and we walked those halls of Congress. And when the program passed, it was in the Capitol, in the gallery where they meet to vote. It was incredible. It was an amazing experience. But those are things we have to learn. We're Americans. We should be taught those things. We need to get out and do those things.
Yeah.
And we need to realize how much power we have.
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm not talking, I'm talking about the power to talk to somebody who's elected and say, I need something better for my kids.
Yeah.
It's just simple as that. And DC, of course, was unique because they were members from all over the country that we didn't vote for. And
Right.
so we had to find a way to appeal to their hearts. Um, and they were from wherever, and that was hard, and I talked to parents in states. You go up with your group of parents and you talk to the member of the legislature or state legislature who you voted for.
Yeah.
I guarantee there will be some movement. And but in with us, what we did, and I always laugh about this, is we let them know that we're from different parts of the country. I'm from Arkansas.
Yeah.
Now don't you think I can call my Arkansas representative and say they not treating me right here in DC and get some action? So I mean, you learn how to do all of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
You use what you can.
So the author of the bill, where was he from?
Okay, the authors of the bill, one was from Virginia, and Speaker Boehner was the other one.
Uh-huh.
And initially, the first member that wrote the first piece of legislation, which changed a lot before it got to the Senate,
Mhm.
um, was from Arizona.
Wow.
So they were from everywhere.
Mhm.
Some of the people that were the kindest to us. One was from Minnesota. One was from Pennsylvania, you know. So, like I said, it's a federal program, so we had to, get close to those people,
Yeah.
And then I also tell parents sometimes you have to work with people that you never thought in life you'd be working with. Speaker Boehner was my champion, and I don't care what other people feel. He made this bill um, have a lot of power, and he saved the program. When we had to fight for it again,
Wow.
he really saved that program. He was always a big supporter. So sometimes you got to stay focused on your children and align yourself with whomever wants to help you.
Yeah.
And I heard a parent say one time, "Well, I don't want to work with him because he's a whatever." And I will go, "Girl, are you crazy? He'll get this bill passed." You have to learn to work with people that support you, you
Yeah.
know. And he did. So they were all over the place. I mean, some of the power and support we had from Congress was amazing.
Mhm.
Was Now the bill only passed by one vote,
Wow.
and all
That's
Republicans
amazing.
voted for it,
Mhm.
and one Democrat. And I remember he was from Tennessee.
Mhm.
And I remember going to him and saying, I just wanted to thank you for your vote because I know you went against your party, and and we really appreciate it. And he stopped me. He actually put his hand up and said, "You do not have to thank me. Sometimes you just do what's right."
Wow.
And he believed that it was right. That has stayed with me. I can see his face. And so we saw a lot of that. So you don't know what you can do until you do it. You
Yeah.
don't know who will support you. Elijah Cummings was a big supporter. Nobody knows that.
Mhm.
I do. And
Yeah.
so sometimes it's people that care about in this particular education arena is people that care about kids.
Yeah.
And you have to think about the fact that all of these people, elected officials, are fathers, their grandfathers, their uncles, are aunts or mothers, or grandmothers. And sometimes you just have to appeal to their heart. When my child was in
Yeah.
jeopardy of getting
Yeah.
lost in the streets of DC, I wanted whoever would listen to me to listen to me. I didn't care who they were. I wanted my child to be saved. I
Yeah.
wanted him to have a great education.
Yeah.
And then I began to want all children to be saved. So it didn't matter who the conversation was with as long as they cared about kids. And so that was kind of our attitude. people at the office buildings on Capitol Hill, they liked our group of parents. You know, they listened to us. I remember one time I heard that one of the appropriators was going to cancel our program. He was not going to vote for it. He didn't even want to present it in committee, and so we went to his office with 40 parents, and he found a place for us to sit, and we sat there for a couple hours and talked to him about our love for our children and how we had kids in third and fourth grade that weren't reading and what does that mean.
Yeah.
And the next day, you know, when he called his committee together, he supported us, and that program actually passed in the House, and so which was unheard of at that time. So sometimes you just gotta speak your heart, you know, let
Yeah.
people know what you need, but you got to get out and do it. I
Yeah.
mean, I think the problem is that parents think somebody else is another parent is going to do it and they don't have to.
Right.
But you got to do it. You got to get out and then now with smartphones you can do this better. But I told parents carry a picture of your child, and we had these little paper pictures. And every time you get frustrated or angry or scared, look at that picture and focus on who you're fighting for and
Yeah.
what you want for your child. Now you can just pop it up on your smartphone. But I remember a few months ago I was looking at some stuff and I took out that picture that I carried of my son, which is, you know, it's falling apart now because I carried it in my pocket for several years.
Mhm.
But I remember the spirit of that. I remember how it made me feel. And every time I looked at the picture of that boy at the time, he's a grown man now, I um I knew why I was fighting. You
Yeah.
gotta focus. You gotta know why you're fighting.
So you made me think of a couple of things because there's a couple of principles that we work with. One being we have no permanent allies and no permanent enemies, only permanent interests. And so that's one thing it made me think about. And then another thing it made me think about in like and where do we pull our power from, right? And one of the principles is basically who do you love? So be
Exactly.
exactly like you're saying. Like if you can pull out that picture and remind yourself about why you're doing this work, and that's a powerful thing.
It
Um,
is. It
so so
is.
so tell me a little bit about just for those people who are brand new to the subject, brand new to all of this. What was the scholarship program and how did that work?
The scholarship program, it's a actually it was really, really interesting. Initially we started fighting for a scholarship program for low income children, mostly African American and Hispanic and Asian,
Yeah.
to go to any private school in DC on a partial scholarship.
Okay.
Well, it became very clear as we fought that wasn't going to happen.
Mhm.
And so it ended up being what they called a three sector initiative,
Okay.
where money went to a scholarship program, traditional public school, and to public charter schools.
Mhm.
And that's what actually passed. And so it's a program that provides resources to go to any private school that is a part of the program. People have to remember that every private school in DC did not opt to be in this program, but at the time, 146 did.
Wow.
And they, our kids would go there. They, most of them, our scholarships were not that big at that time. It was like $9,500 for high school and $7,500 for elementary school. It's gone up some now, but it's never been where it covered full tuition. So we also linked with private scholarship programs so that the rest of and the schools so that the rest of the scholarship would be paid. And in see we this program was implemented in 2004. To this date, no parent has ever had to pay that, so people really came out and helped. And it so the kids go to any school they want to, or any school that has the seats available.
Right.
And it's been amazing. I mean, some kids who probably would not have gone to college graduated. We had the first few years of the program, we had 90% of our kids graduated from high school. uh, and at that time, only 73% were graduating from DC public schools. So that was very encouraging to us. We've seen kids who just would not have had the resources, they lived around the corner from a little private school but couldn't afford to pay it. And their school that they were zip coded to would not have been able to give them the kind of education that they deserved.
Yeah.
And so we've watched them get master's degree. Our kids are old enough. This program's been around for 17 years. And so our kids are old enough where we got kids out of college, out of graduate school. We have a couple with doctorates. We have many with master's degrees,
Yeah.
and lots of them got undergrad degrees. And that's a blessing. There's nothing that makes me happier than running into kids that I remember when they were little kids and who are now working, successful adults, because that was the point of trying to find ways to give our children the quality education that they deserve. They
Yeah.
deserve it.
Yeah.
And so it's been an amazing program. This journey couldn't have been better,
Yeah.
and anybody that's been involved. I talked to some of the parents that were in the initial fight with me frequently. I've stayed really close to some of them. It was hundreds, but at least 10, 12 of them I stayed pretty close to and watched their children. And when the movie premiered in Washington, D.C., it it was phenomenal. All those parents and kids from the initial fight, a lot of them came out, and I got to see kids I hadn't seen since they were in the third grade, who are now adults and or young teenagers, and couldn't get any better than this. One thing I want to say to parents is, when you're going out and you're doing something, you're fighting for your child, and you have any degree of success, it is the best feeling ever. You know, we are the first teachers of our children. We have to be the first advocates for our children, because if we don't get out and fight for our kids, why would anybody else?
Yeah.
We are their representatives, and there's nothing that brings me and many of the parents that I've been involved with over the years more joy than that.
Thank you so much for your time today. Your story is beyond inspiring.
Thank
If
you.
you have not seen Miss Virginia yet, please go and watch that movie. It is available and being streamed. You can look that up on several channels. Um, uh, Once again, thank you for sharing your story. Uh,
You're welcome.
we really, are optimistic that more and more parents are willing to do this work, and by seeing your example and seeing example of other parents that they know that this is possible. So
It
thank you
is
for your
possible.
time,
It
and
is.
it was so good to meet you. And hopefully
Me
we'll
too.
see each other in person sooner rather than later.
I hope so. I really do. And bless you for all the work you do there. And
Mhm.
see, that's what keeps us moving forward.
Yeah,
We know that we're standing together.
yeah.
Bless you.
Bless you too. Thank you for your time. We'll see you again soon. Bye.